The feed is running slow. Okay, there it goes. It was running slow for a moment. You were frozen with your hand up in the air.
Let's see if it comes back.
It's good now.
Yeah, but I think I lost yours.
Let's see.
There it is.
Okay.
And there he is.
Good.
Damn, it's sunny over there. It's nighttime almost here.
Yeah, it's this is the good time of the year. It's starting to cool down.
Yeah, you've been having a lot of heat lately, don't you?
Yeah, the summers are very hot and very humid here.
I can imagine. Oh, I've just been a little bit beside myself with all the stuff that's been happening online. I don't know how much you've been following the London riots and stuff like that.
I've been following it a bit, but I've got some friends that are over there that are commenting on it. But it's it's hard to get a good picture of what's actually going on.
Yeah, and everyone is just throwing in their dime and commenting and using it for their own little agenda. It's just weird. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see some of my friends change their situations of critique, you might say, when they're criticizing things in America. They're on the far left, and this is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad, and now they're all law and order, for England.
Yeah, and especially when you talk England, it's very special because they have that tradition of very little violence against their population.
Yeah.
They have basically no weapons with their police, and they have made it illegal for the police to use water cannons and rubber bullets and all these things. They've just taken every single weapon from the police, so they had like nothing, and now they're bringing it all back in. It's like, okay, for what? 500 people doing some rioting? Isn't that a little bit extreme to change your legal system?
Well, I think we'll see them talking a lot about that, and who knows? Maybe there'll be some deliberation about it.
I hope so. Anyways, it's awesome to have you on here, and I'm really looking forward to getting some of your comments to all the things that are happening and some of the things that we are working on. And I have sort of a ad hoc list of things I would like to really see if I can't get you to touch upon and comment on. So maybe a little bit of a presentation. Well, most of the people that will be watching this will be familiarized with the fact that you're a philosophy professor, and that we found you by strange circumstances.
How did you find me? Through some of the videos I had already, or?
Well, if I can give you a little bit of my personal background in how I actually stumbled upon you, it's really to do with the fact that I am a theology student, right? And in Denmark we have sort of removed the classical philosophicum. It was basically a version of the liberal arts, right? That every student used to learn before they started actual university studies. And that was removed a long time ago, and it's been discussed again and again whether we should reintroduce something like that, because the level of fundamental learning has just been dropping.
Yeah.
And then many people have tried to sort of start up some sort of movement to get that into the curriculum again. And it's just been almost impossible because it's so counter to the way that education works today. So I've just been studying these things in my spare time, really, and trying to familiarize myself with how things were done before, and then I noticed the whole liberal arts movement and the people that are screaming about getting some sort of access to the traditional trivium and quadrivium. And then I started researching, and I stumbled upon your stuff on rhetoric. And because I think you're one of the only people out there that's actually put the whole course online.
Oh, my critical thinking course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I stumbled upon the thing that you did with your colleague about the internet and flaming, and I just said, this is a geek just like the rest of us. I need to get a hold of you.
Yeah.
Because it's so funny when you sit there and you start looking at the classical way of doing critical thinking and communication and dialogue, and you look at what is actually emerging online in forums with flamings, with trolling. If you start deconstructing that and translating it into the classical language, it's exactly the same. So I got very inspired by this, and I really think that there's some good opportunities of translating all these pieces of gold, really, that's in the classics, into modern language, into some modern behavior.
Yeah.
So we started our websites, and we are working on trying to disseminate all these different branches, and the education part was a little bit put to the side because it's kind of something that needs a bigger group of professional academics. So I started networking with people, and I thought that you would be the best choice for starting this, because you have the familiarity with creating videos, with the internet, with communication online, whereas the academics here in Denmark are kind of lagging behind.
Most Americans don't do much with it either, I think. I was actually at the school that I just left. The technology person who worked with me to put the videos online, she's been begging for other professors to do similar things with their courses, and she's had a very difficult time getting any of them to entertain the idea.
And it's understandable, because if you are used to a way of doing things, then acquiring a whole new skill set like the geek skill set, that takes some work, unless you have someone that can kind of handhold you all the way, do the whole midwife thing.
Yeah, but it really wasn't. What I did was very low tech. I took a flip cam and got a tripod for it, and I would just set it up, and each lecture that I gave, I would start recording. I had a student who was responsible to make sure it didn't turn off, and then I would go to my office computer, upload it into the flip cam software, edit it just a little bit, to take out the part where I went up to the camera and turned it on, the part where I turned it off, and then I would give it to the technology person to load into YouTube, because back then individual YouTube accounts, you only had 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So she put it into the institutional channel, which turned out to be a good thing, because it actually got listed in some other institutional sites as well. But now the process would be much easier, because with YouTube you can load videos as large as you want. And if you have a flip cam, I mean, you notice I did almost no editing.
Nothing, really. I think I noticed there was only attendance call in the first one, and some comments on the general curriculum and what the plan was, but that was about it.
Yeah, and you could make it a lot slicker, and I've seen some people, I think, who've done that with some of their presentations, where they put overlays and they fade to a picture or to a PowerPoint slide or things like that. I didn't do that because I was teaching a 4-4 load and had a lot of administrative duties at the time. So it was just something to offer my students originally. And
it's so funny, because that's exactly what I have an issue with, that people are going so high tech and trying to do so many things when it comes to education, it's not necessary. And I actually stumbled upon another lecturer. I think he's in he teaches astronomy and theoretical physics. And then he made a course he called Extraordinary Physics, where he introduced me to the iSpring functionality. That's your dog. What he did was he created these slides in normal PowerPoint, and then he put it in HTML tags next to his video in a normal PHP BB forum.
Okay.
So extremely low tech, but the fact that you could sit there and see him just face on the camera, and then you could go through the slides yourself. That just made things so much more intuitive and so much more like sitting in a classroom, looking at the lecture and looking at the screen.
Yeah, that is a good way of doing it.
And you don't need any high-tech stuff at all. You just need a webcam or a normal camcorder, and then you can just do everything else in post-production.
Yeah.
We've put up some experimental stuff where we did the time syncing. It's a little bit tricky because you have to do it manually still. I'm hoping that we can contact the people that make it and get them to create some sort of tool so you can do it on a video code time basis. But it's just every time I see a presentation, even the professional ones, even the TED Talks and things like that, right? You get the close-up of the person talking, and then there's always like a weird lag between that and then looking at the screen.
Yeah.
And it's the degrees of freedom that's missing, right? Where I am not in control. If I was in the room, I would be looking at it like instantly. When he points something out, I would look at the screen.
Right.
This is not possible in online media unless you use tools like this. So it was just there was just this whole eureka moment when I saw that lecture, and then we've just been playing with it ever since and seeing if we can't push it through. And because it is so low tech, it should be possible to get even the most habitual lecturers in on it and start doing it.
Well, you know, we did a program which is part of our faculty development seminar at Fayetteville State, and it was mostly newer faculty who were doing it. Part of it consisted in having a class session videotaped by somebody who actually had a camera, fairly high-end camera from our Office of Faculty Development. And a lot of the professors didn't want to do it right off the bat, even though they didn't have to do anything other than just get up and talk. They were reluctant to be on video. And then once, I think there were about 4 or 5 of us who actually did it. And it does make you self-conscious to do it at first. And some of the professors really didn't, they had very negative reactions to seeing themselves in the classroom on video. They didn't like the way they came across. They didn't like the way that they sounded, they looked, or moved, or things like that.
Self-criticism. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'm not sure exactly. I'm sure in individual cases there's a lot of different factors that come into that. And I remember actually in mine, I had actually misspelled a word behind me because it was an 8 o'clock class, and I'd rushed to get there and put something on the board very quickly. I think I misspelled a numerative, so I was talking about enumerative inductions. And I didn't realize it until I actually saw the video, and then it felt kind of foolish. So I can understand their to do it. I don't know. You might not get everybody doing it, but there's a lot of things we can talk about with this. if the guiding idea is that you want to provide something for students, essentially remedial, giving them what used to be provided in a classical education, so that when they're going to university, they're better equipped.
It's a combination, right? I want to show people how easy it is to do these things, so it becomes more of a natural thing to just do it as a hobby thing, right? So you can get the staff and the students to start sharing these things, right? The whole remix culture, get them to start putting things out there, sharing it with each other, seeing where it takes them. Maybe someone got some ideas or some angles on things that we can't even imagine yet. And if the tools are available and there's some support by, well, what I will call more professional academics, it makes it so much easier, because I only see professional academics in things like Academic Earth and similar things, right? Where it's overproduced, in my opinion. It's very difficult to find people like yourself that just went in there and just said, I'm going to do this, and then just played with it.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole amateur level, if we can call it that, or the self-taught. They're just throwing everything in there, like big time, right? And they're making a lot of what I will call mistakes or assumptions, or they might have read some areas and kind of gotten an interest, and then they just kind of, in my opinion, jump the gun.
Sure.
Especially now, I'm in the group that I invited you to, the whole Trivium thing. There's a really, really huge interest in this area, right? But it seems as if, because it's so difficult to get a hold of many of the resources, or some of them are not really easy to read, then they don't really have they don't have the door, they don't get the initial tool set. And that's not even trying to speak badly about anyone. It's just that personally I hated grammar until I started theology. Until I got acquainted with Latin and Greek, I didn't see any reason to use grammar, because grammar is something you learn naturally, and you know it when you're 7, or you won't ever learn, right?
Yeah, although here in the United States, that's really no longer the case. Pedagogically, when my generation, I'm in Generation X, mine was the last where they did, for instance, sentence diagram, which is, common way of teaching grammar, and it's kind of drill-like, and you can do it in front of the class, and it's very helpful to do that. They quit doing that because of changes in pedagogical theory that saw it as, oppressive or restrictive or something like that. And what we have now are students who have never done that. Two generations, one, right before me, and then the still younger generation. And not having gone through that sort of exercise, class after class after class, they don't have any sort of sense about how things fit together. And of course, sentence diagramming isn't the only way you could do this. There'd be other possibilities, but they put nothing in its place.
But it's also because it seems to me as if a lot of educational institutions have killed it. They've taken out the soul. I'm trying to use a lot of references to popular culture. I compare these things with martial arts.
Yeah.
It's very boring doing katas, right?
Yeah.
It's fucking boring.
But you have to do it, otherwise you don't develop the repertoire that's needed.
Exactly, and it's exactly the same with every other, all the other aspects of what you would call algorithms.
Yes.
Right? Whether it's language or math, you have to do the whole work, right? You have to sit there and just do line upon line upon line of math until you're getting blue in the face and you hate it. But then when you see it applied, then the light bulb kind of turns on and you go, ah, now I understand. It's a whole Karate Kid thing, right? It's the wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
But because of a lot of what I would call dusty or boring teachers, they don't put it in that context.
Yeah.
So you can't grasp why it's important.
Yeah, there's been a tendency in educational theory, say in the last 20, 30 years, to frame things in terms of an old paradigm, which was chalk and talk and you know, lecturing and rote memorization and all that sort of stuff. Which, yeah, you're right. If the pedagogue is not very good, it's stultifying. And then to contrast that to a new paradigm where everything is very dynamic and interactive and all this sort of stuff, which would be good, except that the students don't have the basic skills and dispositions acquired to actually make any use of that innovative, fun stuff. And so what we have now is a whole generation of kids, and you know, in our colleges and you know, still in high school, who, and actually in the workplace too, because this is becoming a big problem for businesses, who never learned how to learn, and they haven't been challenged, and they've gotten the idea that it should all be, you know, very fun and engaging, or else it's no good. So they've gotten the wrong understanding of what's going on in education. And there's been very little attention paid to the development of the pedagogue themselves.
Exactly.
There's a lot of talk about, you know, being engaging and showing your students you care and all that sort of stuff, and that's nice, but that doesn't give you any concrete guidelines. And you know, everybody tends to overrate themselves, I think, with that sort of thing. So even
wouldn't you call it over-professionalism? Because what I have seen, of course mainly here in Denmark, but I'm pretty sure that it's the same the world over, is that teachers kind of get their soul pulled out of them. Now I was commenting on that.
You mean university teachers, or do you mean
any teacher, any educator? They seem to have lost contact with their own humanity. I know that sounds a bit harsh, but follow me on this.
We have two different tracks. We have our kindergarten through 12th grade teachers. They get an education degree, and that's from a school of education. So within the university, you've got a separate school of education, which is dominated by you know, practitioners from that field, who generally aren't very good at educating, and so they turn out bad teachers, and they sort of perpetuate this. And they generally have very little contact with the sort of classical education that, you know, we both want to see, and they see that as sort of the enemy. But then we have the people who are going to be teaching all the disciplines within the university, and they've gone through, you know, a graduate program. And yeah, there's a problem of professionalization there as well. Usually they've had no pedagogical training. They've just been taught how to become good researchers, which is, you know, there's a virtue to that, right?
Sure.
You should know what you're talking about when you're teaching something, but there's no. I mean, there are some places where this is not the case, but in general, there's very little attention paid to how to teach undergraduate students.
But I think it's a fundamental problem of how to teach anyone, and I see this in so many fields. It's as if the professionalism promotes two branches of thinking: the traditional orator thing, where you are at a podium and you are telling someone what the thing is about, right? And then you have the kind of militaristic drill sergeant thing, where the student have to do something by rote, right? And none of these things is in classical education. in classical education, the highest way of learning is about dialogue.
Yeah.
And that's been totally killed.
Yeah.
I don't see dialogue anymore. It's as if, because we've been getting used to books. Books is actually a non-dialogue medium, right? Traditionally, when someone was telling stories, you would have an audience and you would engage with them.
Yeah.
Just like a stand-up comic or even traditional theater with the Globe. You would get that response from your audience. It would be some sort of dialogue. But with modern movies and books and education, it's just all one way.
Well, there is like I said, there is that new paradigm stuff which focuses on experiential education or service learning or all these things that fall under the rubric of innovative education. But there's still a disconnect there because students do tend to like that stuff, but they don't. There's not a lot of evidence that they actually learn very much from it. And they, it's not connected to the other modes of education that are going on in the classroom. There's nothing integrating it.
What I feel that is lost somehow is again the human side, right, where the educator is humble.
Oh yeah.
Where the educator actually realizes that they are in a situation of learning as well.
Yeah.
You can, especially when you get to university, the fact that they still tend to assume authority in every single aspect that's being discussed. You are dealing with young people from an age of 18 to in their 20s, right? It's not as if they haven't had enough time to master anything. They could easily have reached a level where you as an educator are actually lacking.
Well, yes, it depends on where they are in our educational system, because we have tiers, and the kind of students that I was teaching at Fayetteville State University were at the very bottom tier, and the younger students for the most part. It was a very non-selective school. We did a lot of remedial work. Even with that, the graduation rate was about 9% in 4 years. A lot of the students were lacking the basic dispositions that are needed in order to be educable. Getting them to actually read the textbooks, show up on time. Do that was quite difficult. Where I actually found myself encountering the sort of students that you're talking about were the older students or the military students. The military, requires you to grow up pretty quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And I think though that there is a difference. And again, I'm basing this on just anecdotal things from talking with other European friends about their university experiences. I think that there's much more of the authoritative, behind the podium professor in European European university education than there is in American university education. There's a lot of people who want to sort of come down to the students' level and be their friends and all this sort of stuff, which has its own problems. Because then the students don't actually take you seriously, and they don't take the material seriously. Yeah, but so let's talk about the idea behind this trivium education. You want to focus on the traditional trivium.
I want to try and kind of get a natural interest in philosophy and in the whole school of the classics, because personally, I have had the experience that once that door opens up to you, then learning and showing a genuine interest in almost any subject becomes so much easier. And there's something profound about the simplicity of the classics, even though the language sometimes is a little bit tough. But the ideas and the way they kind of give you some fundamental understanding of your life, of what the human condition is, of everything really. It's just such a good way of starting things, no matter what you're going to study.
Yeah. Now, when we use the terms that are used for the traditional trivium, over here we'd encounter some problems, because grammar just means that narrow subject of how you put terms together. It doesn't encompass what it used to in the Middle Ages, which is now what we call literature. The study of higher order things that are going on in a text. When we say grammar, we generally mean just the level of the sentence and maybe the paragraph and how the terms are put together. Semantics, essentially.
Exactly, and this is basically what I would usually call the fixed shapes, right?
Yeah.
This would be the kata in martial arts. This would be the individual moves and the application of them, and the rhetoric would be more flowing and up to the individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it seems as if, because we've lost that, then so many things is a mystery to us today. Like symbols, the origin of symbols, what they are, why they are the way they are, why we need to consider playing with words and playing with language.
But we have these things being studied, but they're being studied under other disciplines. Rhetoric has been displaced to English and communications for us. And then there's specialized studies of political rhetoric and political science, and rhetoric of particular uses by historians and things like that. It's totally divorced from philosophy now in philosophy departments.
It seems as if there's been some Gordon Gekko type person that's just gone in and taken the whole company, the whole composition, and just split it apart and sold it to the other faculties.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Although it took place sort of unconsciously, and then dialectic. Nobody really uses that term anymore, except for Marxists. Well, and some neo-Aristotelians. But they're so far divorced from the other people doing work. So I think one of the things you'd want to do is to somehow get across to people that when you talk about grammar, rhetoric, dialectic, you don't just mean what people mean by those these days.
Exactly, and also add the things that I call everyday usage of the trivium that people don't really know that they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time you use slang, you're basically playing with words and their meaning. You're doing some sort of rhetoric, right? You are reshaping the meaning of language. And also something like, I don't know if you've seen this, but this is very frequent on the interwebs. The use of etymology in that very freestyle form, where they basically make it mean whatever they like.
Yeah.
And there's no rigorous thinking at all. They don't even look it up. They just try to use the sound and then infer some sort of relation to something that they would like to fit into their narrative, right?
Yeah, and we have some groups and communities in which that is that's the common practice that they just sort of pass on and do. Well, and people do that in public speaking and in what would you call it? Sort of popular lectures. Say, well, responsibility. The word response is included in there, and that's what actually gives us our sense of responsibility, and that sort of thing. So yeah, there are communities in which that's a common practice.
And the thing that mystifies me really is that no one has decided that these things should be taught very early on, because this is so easy to acquire once you figure out how it works. It's not that difficult. It's a rule set that everyone can start doing, and they actually do, just without any prior knowledge.
Well, for us, the situation is complicated again because of the institutional structure of education. In order to become a kindergarten through 12th grade educator, you have to get a degree in education. And so they have their particular models, which change pretty frequently, but usually are totally disconnected from the past. And there's a tendency to focus just on that and learning how to put together lesson plans well and negotiate all the different things that you're supposed to do and engage in assessment, and not to actually learn your subject matter that you're supposed to be teaching, and certainly not to have a broad liberal arts-based education that would let you see that these things are important to inculcate systematically. So what we do is we turn out educators for K through 12 who they're not equipped to even see this as a problem.
But it's so funny because people that are then what you would call successful, right? And that people look up to, the most famous writers, most famous academics. When you listen to what they do, it's basically something that is a natural application of these tools, right?
Yeah.
The same with the comics. What does a stand-up comic do? I tend to joke with the fact that Jon Stewart is maybe one of the best orators and rhetoric speakers in the US at the moment. He's just so strict and on key with everything, from popular references, the etymology, the fundamental meaning of things, and he can just cut it to the most minute detail. He's so well spoken, and it's all because he uses these things naturally.
Yeah. Well, where we have our for K through 12 education, where we have schools that actually do end up focusing on this. It's largely in private and religious schools, because there they don't have to hire people who are state certified and got their degree in education. They'll hire somebody who actually has a degree in English to teach English, or they'll hire somebody who's actually a historian, has a master's or maybe a PhD in history to teach history.
Which brings me to the whole meritocracy problem, right? And the whole authority fallacy. This has been inbred into our schools and also into our professional lives. It's as if we've reached a point where nothing works anymore because we demand merits in a way that is no longer logical, really. I don't know if you've got this in the US, but where an education takes something like 5-6 years, right? Higher education. And then when you come out and you have to apply for jobs, they want a freshly educated person with 3 to 5 years experience.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or is there something linguistically wrong in that? It's like it's a natural paradox. This doesn't compute. How can I apply for this job?
Yeah.
They set you up to fail, or they create barriers of entries that are so extreme that people get discouraged. And I think this is why the only thing that I can see solving some of these problems, or at least alleviating the problems, is opening up for more self-education, more free education.
Yeah.
Back to the classical academy, right?
Yeah.
It's not about who's older or wiser. It's just about being there. I know that sounds very Olympic, really, but it is just about partaking in it. And this is what I think we've gotten very early with the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's been the mantra from the beginning, right? Information wants to be free.
Yeah.
And they've practiced it. It's just that they've practiced it in anonymity, which means that then you don't get any merit or credentials for it. It's hard to go in there now where anonymity is being reduced and say, well, I was that person. Prove it.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of ability and self-taught merit out there that really isn't being used for anything, because back then it was underground and no one knew about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now we have a variety of free courses offered by the universities that wanted to get into that, but they had to have the resources to make that possible. You know, you've got iTunes U, and MIT has their own series, and some of those are very structured. This is something actually I was thinking about a while ago, because we were being encouraged to try to incorporate that sort of stuff into our classes at FSU. And all that seemed to do to me was to sort of intensify the academic tier system.
Mm.
You know, where the schools that had the great resources and were able to afford people very light teaching loads could get into that, and then we should all sort of just be colonized by them and incorporate that into our classes. That's sort of, you know, it ends up being the opposite of what it's supposed to be. It just you know, incorporates another sort of stratified system. I mean, why should somebody who's at MIT necessarily be a better expert on Aristotle than somebody at a state college? They're not necessarily.
No, and I will take that even a few steps further and say that it's not structure that's needed. It's the freestyle. Blogging is very popular, really, right? And there might be a little bit of an overload in too many people writing walls of text. But if more of that was networked and just had a little bit of structure that pointed towards education,
yeah,
then it would be extremely valuable. And that's just from the educational perspective. I tend to also look at the dissemination of the individual. I use people like Terence McKenna. The work that he has done, right? If he had the same tools available that we have now,
yeah,
there would be a lot more material available. So it's also for posterity, right?
yeah.
If people start documenting at least some of their thoughts or ideas, or create material, well, I say for free, because of course people need to earn a living some way, but you can't really put a price on immaterial value.
Yeah.
It's impossible. you don't know what type of popularity you're gonna get. And usually, if you are a live artist, if you are truly virtuous, then you will most likely only reach that point very late in life. It takes a long time to build up that momentum, right?
Yeah.
Especially because you're also developing these things yourself, right?
Yeah.
And by showing people that these tools are available now, and you can really do some amazing work with very low tech, there will be so much information available that the main problem will be sorting through it all. Exactly like the blogs, right?
Yeah, that you're right. There is an issue there of classifying things and producing good search mechanisms.
And this brings me to
so that, you know, if you let's say you set up like a whole online curriculum. If you see this set of videos and this appeals to you and you got a lot out of it, then you should also look at this one over here, which you know follows up on it. And there are ways of linking those things, but there's no very good way of linking them where it makes sense.
No, and
word choice or things like that.
And this brings me to something that I see coming very soon. We will be getting better tools for tagging, and we will be getting better tools for voice recognition and live audio caption and stuff like that. So you will be getting these weighed clouds where you got words and you can weigh them and you can get the statistical thing visualized.
Yeah.
So that will of course help us a lot in searching for things. But more important is the human contact.
That's actually another thing I was wondering about. So the general idea, if I've got it down right from you for this Trivium thing, is one major component is putting together a whole set of videos that people can watch, can listen to. Maybe there's you know, we create online resources to go along with them, or you know, each one has its own site with a whole bunch of links, you know, to the things that are referred to and to other videos. And then how do you have interactivity after that? Well,
the interactivity would most likely come by the fact that people would go to the resources, and then when they relink them through the social media, whether they are using Twitter or Facebook or Google Plus or whatever, then you can get the two-way communication that way. And this brings on the fact that it is so important that the people making these things, at least to some extent, makes themselves available.
Yeah.
And don't sit there and hide behind TAs or PAs or whatever, right? Because then you don't get that interaction.
Do you know about VU? It's a social media that's been around for about, I think, about a year or so. And here's the format. You have a profile, and your profile includes a waiting video, which can, you know, it's a very short loop, and then you have another video when somebody asks a question or posts a comment where you can say, well, I can't answer you right now, but I'll answer you in a little while. And then you have a whole set of video responses. People can ask you questions or make comments. You can't dialogue directly, you know, video to video, but you can use it. Like, I used it for my class, and I had people asking questions about particular issues in critical thinking or broader issues, and then you create a up to 2-minute video response to them, and the students liked it. I gave them extra credit for doing it because they liked it.
Perfect.
But it's there are channels now in VU, and it's being used by some businesses and by some different networks, some things dealing with comedy or fashion or things like that. And it's still in its early growth stages, but it's got some real potential for doing interactive things like that. And there is a community to some degree of V users. So I would take a look at that. I would actually think about seeing if for Trivium Education, if you could get them to create a channel. Because what a channel is you've got a bunch of different people in it. I'm already in it.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to, and I've been pointing this out in relation to other products. There are so many specific products really that can do all these things. And I was just doing a presentation of Skype and explaining why it's important that people choose Skype instead of everything else, because we can't really get to the critical mass and get the whole movement going unless there's enough people on one media.
Yeah.
This is the whole classical Messenger versus ICQ thing, right? And it's the same with these services. Now I've actually broken my own rule, because I used to say that everyone should be on Facebook, but now I can see that some of the directions that Google Plus and the whole Google Docs and collaboration tools are moving into is so useful and so much in front that I think I will be slowly moving more and more over there when it comes to live activity. And I think YouTube is actually just as good as anything else when it comes to simultaneous communication with video.
Yeah.
Because just putting it up there and then just putting it behind the wall so it's just not publicly visible.
Yeah, I think the YouTube now, and I haven't experimented with this yet, allows you to create videos in response to comments.
Yes, it does.
Videos in response to videos. So yeah, that could be good. Actually, with VU, I found that the 2-minute limit was a bit restrictive for me to go into some of the things that I wanted to talk about. So I created a YouTube series called Dr. Sadler's Chalk and Talks.
Nice.
And, yeah, because I don't like these. There's this video that gets used over and over in presentations, and it was made about 5 years ago, and it's about why chalk and talk is the worst thing you can ever do to students, and we've got to get with the new paradigm and all that. So I called it Dr. Sadler's Chalk and Talk, just to sort of stick it to the people who wanted to say that you can't get up and lecture in front of a chalkboard anymore. And I would use that as to supplement the VU stuff. And they're about maybe 15 to 20 minutes long. I've only done 10 of them so far, but I'm going to start up again this fall now that I've got a new base to work from.
I think one of the things that amuses me when it comes to the whole criticism of lecturing with a blackboard is that I don't think that the student realizes that it's basically the same as when they do their notes.
Well, it's not the students who are criticizing it.
No. But what I mean is that to a lecturer, writing on the board is exactly the same, or rather the reverse, of the students taking notes. It's thinking with your hands.
Well, and I found that students really want professors to lecture.
Hmm?
They get something out of it.
As long as you can kind of put in some sort of break mentally, so because the attention span about 15 to 20 minutes, then you need some sort of, I don't know, a joke or something, because otherwise people are just going to go, oh my god, I can't write anymore.
Well, and when you're lecturing, it's easier for me to do because I generally teach at places that have smaller classrooms. But you have to engage the students. You have to ask them leading questions and get some discussion going, and have some useful examples that will be funny or provocative or something like that. And yeah, I mean, you can do very dry, boring lectures, and that doesn't do anybody any good. But students really do want the traditional lecture format because they find they get something out of it. You know.
And one of the things that we've been spending a lot of time on, it's testing the limits of different software and resources and styles and way to present things really. But what I have found is that there is so much not being done yet.
Yeah.
In applying the technology that we already have. It's still the same thing when you go to even your university, Fayette, right? The layouts of educational institutions, it's all the same. It's kind of the same with the
websites, or
websites, and the same with the magazines. It's just like copy paste all over. It's what, have you got no creative thinking? And then when you go to the creative people, then you just facepalm and go, okay, you're just being weird now because I have no way of actually maneuvering around your site. It's like Flash and autoplay and whatnot.
Well, I again, I'm going by very limited experience with this, but what I've observed is some of the roadblocks to doing anything good with university resources are you have to get permission from administration sometimes for quite a few things.
Yeah.
And they'll have people, in charge of, say, social media policy or something like that. And so those people are generally not very good at what they do. And then, departmental websites are usually farmed out to the departmental webmaster, who may or may not have any background in technology. It's usually one of those sort of things that you do as service, and you do it usually because nobody else wants to do it. I created my own university website when I was at Fayetteville State because they let us, and it took me 6 months to actually get it linked to my departmental webpage. Sending emails and reminding people and all that. Just, it was just not a priority. And of course, now that I've left, it's all gone, and I have to recreate it. Probably through Google Sites, I'll do it. So I mean, that's one of the obstacles to it.
One of the things I have wondered a lot about, not just the administrative part and the whole red tape, but more the fact that it seems as if everyone is a little island, and they are trying to protect their, the necessity for them to exist.
Yeah.
It's as if, especially with IT, I don't understand why the IT responsible people aren't actually teaching IT, at least just basic stuff, like get professors connected to things that are useful to them.
They did at my old institution, but most of the professors wouldn't take any of the classes. In part because we were at that institution, we were overworked. We had a 4-4 teaching load with students who were really underprepared. We had a heavy service component, and we were also going through reaccreditation. So that drew a lot of time and resources away from people. But yeah, getting the IT people to offer the stuff, and then not simply to become frustrated with the professors and say, all right, get the hell out of the way, I'll take care of it for you. That is a problem.
And it seems as if now, when I stumble upon some professor or someone's paper and I really want to dig a little bit deeper and I want to get in contact with these people, finding the professors is sometimes just a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to contact them, and then it's always in some obscure faculty, page something where there's no pictures and you can't see if it's really the right person, and instead of an actual email, sometimes there's an email form, and that's just so impersonal.
Yeah.
And it's so ivory towerish.
You ended up contacting me through Facebook, right?
Yes, because I could actually not find you through the through just searching on Google.
Well, that's interesting, because I usually come up pretty high in Google searches for some things. There's not that many Gregory Sadlers out there.
I think I the only thing I didn't get was your direct relation to your job. Everything else I got YouTube videos and whatnots, and that's how I found that awesome lecture about flames and trolling. It was so funny.
Well, the reason is because I left my university just recently. I now I'm only adjuncting for Marist College.
Okay.
I moved up to New York from North Carolina. I left my job, and my fiance lives up here. So she and I had been carrying on a long distance relationship, and we were tired of it. And I came up here with no job, and I started my own consulting company.
Yeah, I saw that. Not a lot happening there yet, but it looks really good.
Yeah, it's just right now it's just leads, but I've just started it, and I'm sort of capitalizing on some of the semi-administrative faculty development things I did at Fayetteville State University. And assessment things that I did. It's not my real love, and this year actually is it's sort of like a sabbatical year for me. I never did get a sabbatical year, and so I'm going to just teach part-time, try to build the company, build some websites. I'm working on a couple different books, and then I'm going to keep doing the video production stuff.
Because I saw some of the projects that you're working on, and of course, it doesn't tie in directly with the trivium and quadrivium stuff, but it is very much on par with the whole classic stuff. You were working on virtues.
I have a classical background.
The virtues topic is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Especially because now we are engaged in a lot of stuff with corporate social responsibility. And this is where everything is trending. It's all trending towards, call it self-discovery or self-teaching of ethical behavior.
Yeah.
And that's why I see the current era as so much a, call it Renaissance 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Because now Bruce Sterling was doing a lecture or presentation, and he actually coined a whole new phrase, media philosophy.
Yeah.
Because we went from natural philosophy, right, into sort of a stringent and very strict curriculum way of thinking, and now we're moving out of that again. So now we are going to rediscover natural philosophy and the natural behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is going to start becoming individuals and dialogues and hangouts, right? instead of those unnatural institutional ways of putting people together. There's a lot happening in this. It's a whole different topic, but it's just there's going to be so much need for people that have kind of looked in the teacher's edition.
Yeah.
In the classics, because it is very much rediscovering all that. It's just I find it very amazing that someone like Bruce Sterling, he's very much a philosopher himself, more than he's actually a writer in my mind. I remember 10 years ago when he was explaining things about how all governments are always kind of like an interim provincial government, because they're always an anachronism. They're always behind. They were yesterday's news, yesterday's problems. And as things have accelerated and it's moving faster and faster, this has just become more and more evident. And today people don't even bother much about politics because they can't see any need for it. And this is because you need that direct democracy thing that you used to have in the classical age. That was engaging, right?
Or at least responsiveness. I don't know if I'd call it direct democracy, because that sounds, much more Rousseauian. But yeah, with the responsiveness between those who are governing and those who are, all these different interests within society.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about in relation to the classical democracy, right? Today we show up when we vote at all times of the day, and we don't really engage with each other, right? And then we go into a booth, and then
sometimes you're actually forbidden to.
Exactly, and that means that you don't have the social interaction anymore. And back then, everyone was meeting at the same time and place, and then they voted. So you got that feeling of community. That's been totally destroyed.
Well, and some deliberation before you actually voted. Yeah, what we have actually, this is the norm here, is we have our polling places, and then you're not allowed to talk to anybody or hold any signs or do anything within something, like 50 feet or 100 feet or something from the polling place. And outside of that boundary, you'll have the interest groups. and you have to walk their gauntlet, to get in. And sometimes they're polite, and sometimes they're just vicious. And depending on where you are and which interest groups you're talking about. And then once you get inside, it's this fairly bureaucratic process of, okay, get in line, show your, whatever. Sometimes you need an ID, sometimes you don't need an ID because everything is so decentralized here. And then you go into the inner sanctum of the booth. And
Holy of holies.
Yeah. And then, and actually I'm divorced, and what my ex-wife and I used to do is we would take our daughter in with us when we would vote, so we could show her how it's done and tell her who we were voting for and why and all that sort of stuff. But that was it. That's the only personal contact. And then you go and you take your ballot that's been punched or marked or whatever, and then you put it into the box.
Yeah, it's just funny because the way I see it with social media and with the development in technology, when things like that happen now, you can actually have a very social event where people are gathering and focusing on it. It's no longer a one-way communication, and it's no longer just the politicians telling you what to do. You get a chance to actually put your voice in there too.
Yeah.
And this is something that we see really taking a hold on the public mind right now with the way that social media has been used in the whole revolt and riot scene, right? And this is for negative stuff. I'm really intrigued at seeing how this will develop in a constructive manner, because I think that's going to be huge. When people start engaging in each other's work, whether it's there was the huge fish fight. I don't know if you followed that from over there. The fishing quotas in the European Union is just bonkers, and there was a huge activist group started by a documentary filmmaker working for Channel 4, and that just grew into this huge movement in like a month or something like that, from a few thousand in the UK that actually knew about it to 600,000-700,000 people supporting this change of the legal system. So they got it all the way to the European Union and the members of Parliament, and this is just so much about how to engage and get activism on a more abstract level than just running around in the street throwing rocks.
Yeah.
So I can just see that this is just going to get into every part of our life in one way or the other. And I think that if we get it in there with education as well, then it's going to make people able to seek information themselves, really become critical thinkers, and not listen to all the bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
At least talk about it more, you know.
Yeah.
Start weeding out the legitimate concerns and demands and statements from ones that are, you know, just based in ideology or passions or interests or things like that. Yeah.
I tend to joke with the fact that there's only one over unity machine that we know about in the world right now, and that's human beings. Because when we create something or share our work or do education, you're always creating more than you would be expected to.
Yeah.
So as long as people keep doing that more and more and try to spread that ability, it's going to, because of technology, it's going to accelerate to the point where it's not nice to say, but classical institutional education is going to be a thing of the past. It's going to be a dinosaur. What will happen is that the lecturers will, the institution will turn into a network of very talented and professional lecturers.
What will all the other people do then, though?
Well, the other people will most likely be part of something else, and this is the whole, well, when the robots come, what will people do?
Right.
Yeah. It's a classical question. They will do something else. They always have. When you're done with one resource, you just move on to the next. And we are so lucky that it's a growing abstraction level, right? We've coined the four-tiered system with raw materials at the bottom, and then structural wealth, knowledge, and then the final product or the immaterial wealth. And people just move higher and higher in that hierarchy.
Yeah.
And it's the same with education. When education gets, I call it liberated, the amount of knowledge that's going to be shared is going to be so huge that there's not going to be any lack of jobs. There's just going to be a better focus and more efficiency. Instead of having 20 students, you might only have 5, but then you can really dedicate yourself to teaching those 5. So it's about efficiency, really, right? And it will be more based on you making yourself available instead of being forced to be a specific place in time.
Yeah.
Because it really makes no sense. The number of times I've seen lecturers repeat the same curriculum even with the same jokes.
Yeah.
I have a video camera. That would be easier. And then there might be more time for them to engage in both their own research, engaging with their colleagues, and creating new material.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people will be fed up with information, really. On the contrary.
Yeah. Well, let's change the topic to very practical concerns, because that's all very picture stuff. Because my battery is I've got about 30 minutes left on this.
Okay, perfect.
So
then I will just let you talk, and I will just guide you with some questions, because I would like to get your take on the future application of these topics like the dialogue and the liberal arts. Where do you think this will go?
Which the
how can we disseminate these things, and what will it create, especially in regards to how to simplify it?
Oh, I don't know. I have to think about that. Again, these are very, very big picture things. What I was going to ask you about is what you want from me on my end.
Well, then I'm going to partly answer some of the questions myself, because this is what I would like to get from professional educators like yourself.
Okay.
Something that is in between a private blog and a classroom lecture. Small clusters of blogs, video blogs, experiments with taking personal thoughts and applying them into some sort of educational value or purpose. Whether you are inspired by your dog getting into a fight with another dog and then talking about violence and dominance and how it's used in rhetoric and something like that. So it's about finding some way of using the real life, private life narrative in professional format.
Okay. So you want to use personal experiences, relationships, things like that as anchor points, so to speak, for something at a higher level of generality that would then tie in with some sort of theme or concept or figure or maybe dispute in classical education.
Yes,
so,
and especially with learning to use some of these possibilities when it comes to technology, like the slides. So by timing that little bit of 5 or 10 minutes, then filling it up with a lot of references and meta tags, meta captions, really. So there's
so you're looking for very short videos.
Yes, and it's kind of like cutting classes up into 5-10 minute pieces.
Yeah, those are tough to do. I can tell you that, because the idea with that Dr. Sadler Chalk and Talk was I was going to impose on myself something like a 12-minute cap, and I'd always go way beyond it, because you find more and more that you want to talk about with these things. But if you have a whole bunch of clusters that you can link to each other, then that eliminates that problem. Because otherwise the temptation is to say, well, I want to tell you about this, but in order to understand this, I got to also tell you about this, and then I got to tell you about this as well, and then it gets longer and longer and longer. So that'd be an interesting challenge to do this in 5 to 10 minutes.
And actually also the other the complete opposite, the total freestyle, free talk, where you don't actually think about time, where you're just freestyle teaching, right? Just you and the blackboard, and then you just run for 1, 2, 3 hours, whatever you like, and then but seriously, because what if the value is there, then finding the bits that are important and tagging, time code tagging things. So you're basically making instead of making a manuscript and then following it, then you're making the whole video, and then you're making the manuscript afterwards, and then you're going to put that into a list. We created a form of blog posts that we call a storyboard, where we've basically taken the interviews and then we've cut them up in small bits and created these slides for them.
Yeah, I was going to say, why not edit it so you take out the long pauses where you're trying to think of what you want to say.
Yeah, that's the idea. But make the full resource available as well. Okay. Because there are people out there that are so knowledge hungry that they have no problem watching a 3-hour lecture if it's on something they really want to learn. Yeah. That's something that they had no idea that they really had a desire to learn about sometimes. Exactly. And so do you want me to determine the
specific content, the themes of all these, or do you have a framework that you want me to put these in, or
I'd say as freestyle as possible, but keeping it very simple, because I've noticed that not just your blog but also your research and your lectures can be a little bit demanding. Sometimes you go into some details where it's like, okay, this is not casual entertainment or edutainment. So if you with the small ones, if it's just a very concise and concentrated version of you had the thing about violence with Anselm. Maybe if you could just reach some clear-cut description of what are virtues, and this one is specific, and then do that. And do you see where I'm going? So it becomes like a huge, you know, in movies when you got these crazy people that are looking for a mystery, and then they have this wall with pictures and links. I want it to be the same.
Okay.
So everything is open, everything is free. Whatever you want to talk about or focus on or get into, as long as there's kind of like a starting point that is focused on the classical liberal arts way of thinking, and then everything else becomes tangents and links and small videos and snippets and references and reviews of books or reviews and commentary on films, whatever. Everything is open. I saw that documentary about the philosophy of the Matrix, and I think using popular culture in that way is really inspiring. I found another guy that's a filmmaker that's doing small reviews and analysis of movies, allegorically and symbolic reviews. It's so counter to what you're used to. You're used to seeing a review being something that makes you go and watch the movie. Very commercial oriented. And then getting these deconstructions of popular art, that's just so inspiring, and it really actually sells it better.
Yeah.
So it's whatever is your interest and inspires you, because I think that will motivate people to do the same.
Okay, so I produce a video. So then here's a sort of logistical question. What do you want me to do with it after that?
The easiest thing to do really would be to put it on, say, your YouTube channel, link it to me. In Skype would be the easiest. Then I can easily take it and download it using Keep Video or similar, and then I can edit it, and I can put it in a format and make it into a post.
Okay. Link it to you in what now?
In Skype. That's the easiest thing really, because then I just go and watch it and download it.
Okay.
I don't know. You don't have any time limit on your YouTube channel?
Not anymore.
Great. So just put raw material up there, and just maybe some notes on your direction of thinking, and if you got other resources like links or images or stuff like that. I don't know what you use. If you use, do you use Google at all yet?
Yeah.
Because then maybe just put it on Picasa or something like that.
Okay.
And then just link it to me. Then I can put all of it together and make it into post.
Okay. We can use Google Docs for some things too if we need to.
Yeah, whichever tools you prefer. And I wanted to present a few gimmicky things, especially the iSpring thing that you might be able to want to test out and play with. And then we are working on portable WordPress model that you might be interested in, because that way you can distribute a whole website by just handing it to people on a USB stick or in a single file.
Huh. Yeah, I haven't done anything with WordPress.
It's very easy. It's very much like Blogger, really. It's just it's got more features and plugins that makes it a little bit more like a real content management system.
Okay.
The reason that we're using it is because we are working on a project with getting technology to Africa.
Okay.
And then having that portability in a physical medium is basically like going backwards in time to the old dial-up model, right?
Yeah.
So it's that way of thinking, and there's also commercial value in the fact that you can then, instead of selling a DVD, which is a limited product, then you can actually sell a USB stick with enhanced media, where you can put video and audio and whatever.
That's a great idea.
And if I get it the way I want it, then people will also start using these sticks as a credential for proving that you are who you claim you are, and then use it as a subscription service.
Okay.
So you subscribe to that enhanced book, so you get all the following upgrades, but only if you have a legit key, right?
Yeah. So I should tell you about. I'm going to continue doing the Dr. Sadler Chalk and Talk things because I like doing that. I'm also going to do lecture capture for my 2 courses I'm teaching this semester. One is an Intro to Philosophy course, and the other one is an ethics course.
Cool.
And then I've been actually thinking about doing something. My fiance is kind of a tech person, so she's good with those sorts of things, and she helps spur my thinking on this. I've been thinking about doing web courses where I get to focus on just what I want to do, basically because I've realized that I will probably never actually get to teach graduate level courses, just because of the way that academic system is, and I went to a low tier school, and so it doesn't really matter how much I publish. I probably will never be teaching at a place where I could actually do a course just on St. Anselm's thought, or on the 1930s Christian philosophy debates, or on Aristotle on anger, or something like that. But because I've got the video capabilities, if I want to, I can produce these things and then put them out, just on the web, and anybody can see them, and I can. There's sort of a problem of. I guess it's a motivational problem of, do you actually want to invest the time to produce pedagogical materials for a course that you'll never realistically have a chance to teach?
Well,
and how do we normally do that? Well, we write a book, right? And I'm doing that as well because I enjoy writing. But I thought this would be a way for me to get to teach the sort of things that I've always wanted to teach, now that I have the leisure to do it. So that could be, in some ways, all those could be good. What's the word? All those could furnish you with materials that you could cut bits out of if you wanted to.
What I would actually like to see on a little bit further down the road would be that if you did something like that, say you did something on St. Anselm or on virtues and created a book and maybe an enhanced book, then actually going on tour, actually inviting you to come to our faculty and maybe do a seminar or something like that, and actually sell the product, the book, and the enhanced media, and
yeah, that enhanced media book is really an interesting idea. So you're talking about, there would actually be a book in the traditional sense, chapters, text, all that sort of stuff, but each subject thing would also have links to, say, video lectures or sources. And is that what you mean by?
You would basically cut your book up, and then you would say that instead of chapters, you will have categories. and you will have menus, and you will have search functionality, and
So
you will
it's
have
more of a constellation. The structure is more like a constellation then.
yes, it's basically a website. The idea is simply taking a WordPress template and then figuring out how to use all the features in creating something that's different than a book, but anyways a little bit like it.
Yeah.
And where you can put in audio, you can put in video, you can put in as many images as you like, and it's not going to change the cost of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea.
And because we have so huge memory capacity now, a 4 gig and a 8 gig stick cost next to nothing.
Yeah.
And even if there's space to spare, then that will make it possible to create a subscription system, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to think more about that. That's actually an interesting idea. Yeah. I'm going to let that one percolate for a while.
Well, I suggest that you look at some of the things, maybe not content-wise, but some of the attempts to apply some of these technological possibilities on our website.
Okay.
Because then you can see sort of where we are trying to take this. We are still very much in the testing phase, but there's going to be 2 professional websites up and running very soon that's going to be using some of these things. And one of them is going to be developed into the first demo model of enhanced media. It's the Thomas Sheridan material. I don't know if you noticed, I did an interview with him. He wrote a book about psychopathy.
No, I have. There's so much stuff on your site.
I know.
I haven't had the time to go through much of it.
But that's kind of the idea, right? If you were doing something like, let's say, a St. Anselm theme,
yeah,
you could make that as broad or as narrow as you like on an enhanced media.
Yeah.
And even getting, I don't know, sponsors or co-writers or other resource material in there, it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think you could with stuff like that you could include interviews with other scholars and dialogues. Yeah, the trick would just be to get releases from them.
What do you mean?
But I don't think that would be that difficult to do.
What, releasing them?
Well, if you want to use somebody else in your video, you have to have a release from them.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like with the St. Anselm thing, one of the big St. Anselm scholars is located not that far from here in Delaware, Kate Rogers. So let's say I did an interview with her, talking. She's got a book recently on Anselm and freedom, and I know her, and she's really bright, and I like talking with her. And so if I did an interview with her and we wanted to include it in one of these sort of things, I would have to get a release from her saying I don't have any problem using that material.
Yeah.
But that's more of a legal issue than anything else. But it's good to get those sort of things sorted out right at the beginning, because trying to get that sort of stuff later on can often be a big pain in the rear.
Oh yeah, indeed.
Well, I'm gonna have to get going because my battery is down to very low.
Very low. It was awesome, Greg. Just I'm always available. Just write me in whatever medium you like. And
okay. Well, and we should maybe touch base a couple times per semester and have talks like these as things go on. So the dogs are now going after something. Just
poke me. You're lucky. Your time frame compared to mine, that means that you're always going to be able to reach me just before I go to bed.
Yeah. What time is it by you right now?
It's 10:30.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that works. Yeah, that'll work out very well. And I can always do morning things too.
And usually I'm always on Skype. So and if I see you on Skype, then I know that you are available. Otherwise, I'm just gonna write you in Facebook or your email.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect, Greg. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah, it was very nice to touch base with you.
You too. Looking forward to working with you.
Me too.
Bye bye.
Bye.